Guys, this is Itisha and today in this video we are going to build Restful CRUD APIs. So for setting up the server, we'll be using Express, which is a Node.js framework, MongoDB as our database, and Postman for testing our APIs. Even if you don't know what CRUD is, don't worry, we'll discuss everything in detail. So without any further delay, let's get started. So let's first understand what is CRUD. So in CRUD, C stands for create, R is for read, U is for update, and D is for delete. So these are the operations of create, read, update, and delete that can be performed on a data in any database. And they are really very essential for any system that manages information. Now this video is the third part in the series wherein we are talking about Node.js. In the first part, we set up our backend server and also connected it with frontend. In the second part, we learned about MongoDB and also how to connect MongoDB to our Node.js application. There, we also created a schema and a model. Now we'll be using all of that understanding and the updated project up to the previous video in this particular video. So if you haven't watched them already, I would highly recommend you to first go and watch those two videos and get your project updated up to that point. Now the first thing that we are going to do here is to install Postman in order to test the APIs that we have written. So Postman is nothing but a tool to test your APIs. So if you don't have it already, you can download it, or else if you don't want to install it on your machine, you can use a browser version of it by signing up here. So I already have it installed. So here it is. So first we are going to create a workspace for the project that we are working on. So I will create a blank workspace over here and I will name it CRUD operations. You can name it whatever you want. And since this is for my personal use, so I will click on personal and click on create. Okay, so our workspace is created. So if you are not aware of how to use Postman and what are the feature it has, you can let me know in the comments. I'll make a separate video on that. For now, I'm assuming that you have a basic understanding about Postman. So the first thing that we are going to do here is to test the API that we already have. So if you remember, in the first video, we created this API endpoint called /API/YouTube, and currently our project or our server is running on port 8000. So I have already started the server over here. So let's first test this particular API. So let me create a route here. So I'll call HTTP localhost 8000. And I will write that /API/YouTube, and you can see here that it's a get HTTP request. So I've selected get from the dropdown that we have. Now, as a result, if it runs successfully, we should get an object wherein we have two things. One is like and one is subscribe. That is two key value pairs. So when we click on send here, you can see here, let me zoom in it a bit, that we have got two key value pairs, like and subscribe. So that means our Postman is very well connected with our Node.js application and we are able to test the APIs. So let me quickly show you the schema, the model and the collection that we created in the previous video. So if you remember, we created this series model.js file within which we created this series schema and this model called as series. And we then imported it in our server.js file over here. And if we go to our MongoDB atlas, we can see that we created a collection with the name series. And for now, it is empty. So the first operation that we are going to do here is to create a document, or say create a series within this collection of say friends. Okay. So for creating that, we'll be using the post HTTP method. So I will simply write app.post. And I need to define my API endpoint over here. So I will call it series, and there is going to be a request and a response. And inside it, I will just log on the console my request.body. So what is this request.body? But before that, let me give you some understanding. So whenever we want to save the data in the database after hitting a particular API, we have two options. We can simply specify whatever data we want to save. For example, if you are creating a series, we need to follow a schema. So we can save the name, description, rating and year of release of a particular series of say friends. But that's not a good idea, because in real life project, what happens is generally whatever data we send from our front end to our back end, that gets saved in the database. For example, if we are building an authentication system, we would send the user's email, password, and the name to our backend API, which will then save that data in our database. So that is generally being called or being accessed with this request.body. Now for accessing this request.body, we require a middleware, because without a middleware, Express does not generally parse the body and data is not available to our request.body object. So we have multiple options to parse our request.body, but for now we'll be using a middleware, that is a built-in middleware in Express, which is express.json. After this, what will happen is our data will get available to our request.body that we can then log on our console, because otherwise if we don't do it, we will always get our request.body as undefined or empty. Okay. Now, let me save this one. Now we'll go to Postman and we'll create a new request. So let me duplicate this one. And it is going to be a post request and the route is going to be /API/series. Now for a post request, we need to pass in some information. So that information can be passed through this body. And there are multiple ways to send it, but we'll be using this raw method wherein we need to simply define an object which will contain all the information that we have defined in here, like name, description, rating, and year of release. Though just name is mandatory and rest can be left as well, that's not a problem. But for now, we'll write everything. So here we have defined the name as friends, description as a show of 5 fun friends, rating as 8.9, and year of release as 1994. If you want to give more rating, don't blame me. This is just a rating that I've taken from IMDb. Okay. And also in headers, we need to change our content type. So currently it is text plain, but we want to change it to JSON. We'll create a new one. So I will write content type and here I will define it as application/JSON. Now we will click on send and see how it is appearing. So now if we go back to our console and let me see this. Yeah, you can see that on the console, we can see that our object got created and it is getting reflected in here. So as of now, what we are doing is we are just logging the request.body on the console, but the main purpose is to save it in our collection. So I will comment it out and we will write a try catch statement over here. And we will catch any errors. I will write the catch statement later. Now in the try, what we want to do is we want to get that object that is being given to us from request.body and we want to save it in our database. So I will write const series and I will write a await, and for using await I need to make this an asynchronous function, and we will use the model that we have created over here. Yeah, this model, and we will use this create and we will pass in our request.body. Also, we will send a response to our Postman or to our front end so that we get to know that it ran successfully and our database, our document got created. So I will send a 200 status code and will send a JSON inside which I will set this success as true, and also I will send my series so that in the Postman when we'll call this particular API endpoint, we also get to know now what is the series object that got created. In case of any error, let me copy this one only. We will send instead a status of 500 and I will also send this as error.message and save this one. Now after this, we are expecting that our new object, that is our series of friends, would get created into our collection of series. Now let's try to call this and click on send. So here you can see that we got the success status, and in the series we got an object wherein we got the name, description, rating, year of release, and whenever we call this, we also get an ID as well because we are using MongoDB. So automatically a unique ID gets created, and since we were using timestamps as true, and I told you initially that this saves the data when it is created and when it is updated, so you can see that we also get the timestamps created at and updated at. Now the main thing that we need to check is whether this got created into our database or not. So we'll go to our MongoDB Atlas and click on refresh. Yeah, you can see a new document got created, and let me zoom in it a bit. So you can see that all the details that were there that we added are reflecting over here as well. So that is how you can create some data. Let's create one more. So now I'll create a duplicate of it, and I will change this to say Game of Thrones. And the description I can give battle, I will write, okay, a battle of throne, and I will give this rating as say 9.2, and the year of release is, I guess, 2011, and I will click on send. So you can see that we got the success as true and this series got created. Let's go back and hit on refresh. So yeah, we have now two documents in our collection. One is Friends and one is Game of Thrones. Okay, so we are done with our create operation. The next operation that we are going to perform is read. So we want to read the data from our database. So I'll go back here. We'll go to our server.js file and we will write a get method. So this is going to be very similar to this. So let me copy this and make changes. So I'll paste it over here. And I will now make it get, because it is going to be, whenever we want to read the data, it is generally a get HTTP method that we need to define. Now inside it, I can remove this because there is no request.body in it, and I will remove this one as well. Now in the try statement, what we are going to write is, we will define a series, a variable called as series, and I am going to use the method. So first I'll access this model, and this model basically helps me to perform all the operations, and I will write a find over here. Now with this find, we would be able to find all the data that is there in our collection. Okay, and if it runs successfully, it should give us the series that we have saved in our series collection. So let me save this one, and we'll go back to Postman, and let's create a new request. It is going to be a get request. The route is going to be the same, and we don't have to pass anything, and we will click on this send. So you can see that it ran successfully and we got the status as true. And in the series, you can see that the this series that we put, it is an array in which we have two objects, one for Friends and one for Game of Thrones. Now, what if you want to simply access a single series from your database and you do not want all the series to get reflected? So in that case, what you are going to do is you are going to use a request parameter. So request parameter are nothing but placeholders that start with a semicolon. So let me first make a copy of this request, this get request. And we simply need to define a route parameter. So we will simply write colon, and by which we are going to, by which of the properties within this object, we are going to access that particular series. So since we know that _ID is going to be unique every time, we can access it with the help of this particular ID. So you can write ID over here. And here we can simply change this one. So we can write find by ID, and whenever we write a route parameter, it gets captured in your request.parameter. So we will simply write request.params.id. And how we need to pass it over here, we simply need to put a slash, copy this particular ID and paste it over here. So this ID that we are sending from our URL will get captured as an ID and will get reflected in our request.params.id. If it runs successfully, we should see our particular series that we want to show. So let's hit on send. So you can see that whatever ID you passed in, as per that particular ID, whatever series that is there in the database is getting reflected. Now you also need to take care of one thing. For example, if you keep this as 37 instead of 36, but there is no particular series with this particular ID. And if I click on send, you can see that you are still getting the series, but it is null. So your user or you won't understand why you are getting this as null. So it's a good idea to capture this problem inside your API route itself. So I will write this, that if we do not get this series, in that case, I'm going to return a response. So I will send the status as 404, and I will send the JSON in which I will set the message as series with the ID. So you can write this ID. So the ID can be accessed with request.params.id does not exist. And let's save this. Now let's see how it is appearing. Now if I click on send, you can see that you are getting the message that series with this ID does not exist. So you are trying to access a wrong ID. So it's always a good idea to write these sort of conditions to check what your error is exactly. Okay, so now we are done with our read operation as well. Okay, so the next operation that we are going to perform is a update operation. Now for updating the data that is there in your database, we'll be using the HTTP method of patch. So basically there are two HTTP methods by which you can update your data. One is put and other one is patch. So put is generally used when you want to update your complete data with something new. But if you only want to update some specific fields within your data, then you generally use a patch HTTP method. So we'll be using patch over here. You can try put on your own. So I'll create a copy of it and I will change this method to patch. Now for updating the data again, we need to specify which series we want to update. So we need to specify this ID again. So this will remain as it is. Here, instead of writing this, we are going to change it to find by ID. So first it is going to find that ID and then update. So I will write find by ID and update. This is a method that you can call on your model, and it is going to have majorly two parameters. One is your ID and other is the updated data that you will get from your request.body. So we'll pass this request.body in here. Okay, it's a good idea to write this here because if you do not find the series, you can send a message, error message that series with this ID does not exist. And up to this point, when you are executing this series will not get updated. So you'll have to create another variable with the name updated series, which will contain your updated data that you have put in. So I will again write this await, and we are going to find that by your ID, and in the ID we will pass in the request.params.id, and we are then going to send this updated series in our response. Okay, so let's test it out. I'll create a copy of the post request that I had initially. I'll change it to patch, and in the body I will change some things. So in this Game of Thrones, I want to change its description. So I will remove everything else and I simply will keep this description and I will change it to fought by many. Let's write this and let's see if description got updated. But remember, we also need to pass in the ID of this Game of Thrones. Okay, let's go to the database and see what was the ID. Okay, this is the object ID. So I'm going to copy this from here and I'm going to insert it in here. Okay, now we'll click on send and see. Okay, so you can see that success is true. Let's see the updated series and see if the description is updated. Let's see if it got updated in our database as well. So I'll click on refresh. So if we see here, we can see that the description is updated and now it is written that a battle of throne fought by many. Okay, so we are done with our update operation as well. So the last operation that is left is we need to perform our delete operation. Okay, so for a delete operation, let me create a copy of this get request again. And here I will change the HTTP method to delete. Again, we need to pass in the ID because we want to specify which document from the collection we want to delete. And here we will write find by ID and delete. And it is going to just have the request.params.id so that it gets to know, okay, this is the one that we want to delete. Also, it might happen that you put in an ID which is not already there in your database. So we will keep this as is. And here we do not want to reflect the series. We just want to write the success as true. And we will save this one. Now if we go back, let me create a copy of this get request. I'll change it to delete. Okay, so let's delete Game of Thrones from our database. So I'll copy this ID and paste it as our route parameter. And if we click on send, we should not be then able to see it in our database. So I'll click on send. So you can see that success is true. Now, if we try to find this, using a read or a get HTTP method and paste it over here. Let's see if it is appearing or not. Let's click on send. So you can see that series with this ID does not exist. And if we go back to our MongoDB Atlas and hit on refresh, we should only see friends in here, and Game of Thrones should get deleted. So yeah, we can see that we are only getting friends in here. So you can see how beautifully we were able to perform all the operations, all the CRUD operations, and how easy it is to write your RESTful CRUD APIs. Congratulations, you have successfully completed your series of Node.js, in which you learned how to create a backend server, how to connect Node.js to MongoDB, and finally in this video you learned how to build CRUD APIs. Now you have become a pro at it, so now I would highly recommend you to build a front end and try to call these APIs and build more APIs so that you make a fully functional web application. So that's all for this video, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more such videos in future.